You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages of the newspapers as they come into us. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the broadcaster and financial analyst Albie Amankona and the political correspondent for Politics Joe, Ava Santina Evans. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, The Guardian looks ahead to tomorrow's announcement from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, that tighter restrictions are to be placed on people seeking asylum in Britain. The Times reports that the Home Secretary will reveal the first 3 countries who risk facing a UK visa ban for refusing to take back illegal migrants. The Telegraph's front page also features that story. The Eye hears that under the plan, asylum applicants may have to wait as long as 20 years to be given the right to permanently settle in Britain. The Metro asks whether the government's push to curb assistance to asylum seekers will ease tensions over migration in wider society. The paper wonders if that strategy amounts to being cruel to be kind. The Express says victims' families affected by the early prison release schemes are feeling betrayed, silenced and forgotten. The Mirror has an exclusive that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been erased from the plaques in the Falkland Islands. The Sun reveals they found Christian B's forest lair. And the Sun are running a campaign to help Kelly Brook win I'm a Celebrity. Get me out of here, is the rest of it. We're joined tonight by Albie Amankona and Ava Santina Evans. Welcome to both of you. That doesn't feature in our papers list. You'll be pleased to know. Oh, you wanted to get it in, didn't you? We're going to start with asylum and the laws that are going to be cracked down on by Shabana Mahmood. She's going to make the statement in Parliament tomorrow. Quite heavily criticised already, although we don't really know the specifics and the details as yet. But what's been briefed so far, they're going to be quite sweeping reforms.
Yes, they are. So this was first sort of drip-fed through the papers on Saturday, and we are going to hear about it now for the rest of the week. But essentially, the long and the short of it is it's going to be rather similar to the Danish system, which the government there has said proved very successful in terms of curbing the immigration numbers. So the headlines here are claims will be reassessed every 2 years, and essentially most asylum seekers, if they've come from war-torn countries, will be in the UK on a permanent holiday, really, for 20 years, because if their country no longer is war-torn, then they will have their claim reassessed and they could be sent home. So these are rather strict rules. I would actually be surprised if any Conservative government even considered bringing these in. They have been heavily criticised by a number of charities, and we're yet to see an impact assessment about the cost, because, you know, you might think, well, this might be cheaper to have less asylum seekers in the country. Actually, the cost of reassessing them is probably astronomical, and I will be surprised if they fully costed that as of yet.
That review every 30 months, that's going to cost a lot of money, isn't it? And if you're doing that over a period of 20 years, this, rather than saving funds, is going to increase the cost overall.
But the thinking behind it is that if these sorts of controls and processes are brought in, it will disincentivise people from coming to the UK in the first place. And we do know that we're spending something like £5 to £7 million a day on hotel accommodation. Now, that is very expensive. And I appreciate that doing this reassessment every 2.5 years is going to cost money. But ultimately, if it's going to lead to a position in the United Kingdom like it has done in Denmark, where in Denmark asylum claims are at a 40-year low, then I think that's probably a trade-off that I think Shabana Mahmood is certainly willing to gamble on.
But where will they stay? I mean, they'll presumably still have to stay in asylum hotels for the meantime. I know the government wants to phase those out, but immediately that's where they're going to have to stay.
And this is what the government are now exploring with local governments, and it is highly contested in areas around the country by local councils. So in a bid to sort of grab a good headline by closing the hotels, they're suggesting that people will be moved into former army barracks, which is actually something the Tories once tried, or into sort of tent cities was one of the more extreme ideas posed to one councillor who talked to me about it in East Sussex, or HMOs, which would mean that on residential properties, a house could be converted into a 10-bedroom housing situation for asylum seekers, which is likely dangerous for the people who just escaped a war-torn country to be put into, given the fever pitch, well, furore that we're experiencing in this country right now.
Albie, the Metro, their headline, Cruel to be Kind, suggesting that Shabana Mahmood is on a moral mission, well, these are her words, to end the crossings and save the asylum system.
I do think it's a moral mission, and I think the Home Secretary is absolutely right to be taking this issue so seriously. If we look around the country, people are very angry about the illegal migration problem. Now, whether or not some of that has been soaked up by some parts of the media, Ava might argue, whether or not it's a legitimate concern, like other people might argue, the feeling is definitely there. And that's why it's so important that whatever government of whichever colour really gets to grips with this issue as quickly as possible. And in The Guardian, one of the things I found interesting about it was that Shabana Mahmood says that this illegal migration problem is potentially making the country less safe for second-generation migrants like her, because it's actually driving an increase of racism in broader society. And that's something that we're hearing up and down the country. There was a lady on BBC's Politics Live show earlier on this week. She was called Helen. She was from Epping, from a group called Epping for Everyone. She actually wanted to keep her name secret because she was worried about being attacked. But she was basically telling the audience about how the parents of mixed-race children in Epping are concerned about letting them go out because they're worried they're going to be attacked because of how the fever pitch on this illegal migration issue has been soaked up.
But I don't understand how this would help that, because if you did have this 20-year reassessment, you'll go home once your country is safe, can you not imagine the sort of slurs that might be born out of that sort of policy? You know, you can imagine, you know, the fever pitch situation we find ourselves in on Britain's streets at this time. Imagine if you could be sent home tomorrow, oh, you should go back, your country's fine, when that person that they're pointing at is quite likely a British national and is not an asylum seeker. Not that you should be doing it to asylum seekers in the first place. I just think it would encourage this idea of, quote-unquote, going home.
But I think a lot of people would think that people who have fled a country because of war and hardship and gone somewhere to claim asylum would want to go back to that country afterwards. I actually think it seems pretty common sense that once the country is deemed safe, that a country is deemed safe, that you'd return back to your home.
What if they're a top-rate taxpayer? What if they're a doctor here, essential to our NHS, and they've got children who live here? Is it right that they're uprooted and then sent back somewhere where they don't call home anymore?
But I think the majority of people that we're talking about are not top-rate taxpayers. The majority of people that we're talking about are dependent on the state for housing, healthcare, a lot of the public services. A lot of them are actually on benefits because they can't work.
But is that because we don't allow them to get a job?
We're not actually talking about top-rate taxpayers here. We're talking about people who are most likely going to be a net drain on the state for the most of the time they'll be in the country.
But we don't allow them to work when they get here. Like, you know, I look at the sort of the asylum hotel that was right by my house, and I think these people are trapped there because they're not allowed to go and work. So how do you know that they might not be a net benefit to Britain if you don't allow them to be?
Look, I'm not necessarily against asylum seekers being able to work when they are having their claims processed, so they're not reliant on the state. The question is whether or not, after their countries, the hardship, the war is over, whether or not they should go back, and I think they should.
So should Hong Kongers go back?
The situation has not improved in Hong Kong. That's why we've opened up the safe and legal route for them to come.
But what about the question of leaving them in limbo for 20 years? I mean, it's very hard to get on with your life when at any moment you could be turfed out.
Well, if we look at another case of where people have moved from a war-torn country to come to the UK temporarily, we think about Ukraine. Now, the UK opened up its doors to thousands of Ukrainians fleeing Putin's awful war, but it was always on the condition that it was going to be a temporary situation, and then once the situation improves, they'll go back. That was actually written into the policies at that time. Now, if we can apply that for Ukrainians, if that's good enough for Ukrainians, why isn't it good enough for the rest of the world?
But what if it's someone who's, say, fled Afghanistan because the Taliban were after them, or if it's someone who's fled Sudan because they're LGBT? It's never going to be safe for those people to return, even if those countries are, quote-unquote, stable in the eyes of... We don't even know what body is actually going to decide that that country is stable. Let's take the UN. If they say it's stable, is it safe for that person to return?
But you disagree with the principle that once a country is safe and the reason for someone claiming asylum disappears, that they shouldn't go back?
I think it's very specific to each person's issue. I think that no one, if you fled the Taliban, I don't think it's ever going to be safe for you to return. If you fled Ukraine, perhaps it is going to be. But this case-by-case decision is extraordinarily expensive, you know, and I don't really understand how the government are going to enforce that when you think of the number of people, the size of the Home Office has been reduced. How are you going to assess these claim by claim every 2 years? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I just think it seems like a ginormous waste of time that could engender racism in the meantime.
In any event, the Mail suggesting that Shabana Mahmood's plans are going to be scuppered by left-wing lawyers and MPs.
Well, I've had a few MPs on the phone today who are particularly unhappy with the legislation, and they have said if they are given the option to vote on it, they will vote against it, which would be catastrophic for Labour at this point in time, seeing as the upper echelons don't seem to be particularly stable. But most of these MPs that I've spoken to are coming at this from a moral perspective. So even if you've got someone who you might typically see as centre-right in the Labour Party, their objection to it is that this is sort of a fishing net that's going to gather a lot of people into the net that shouldn't be there, and it's going to be more costly for the country having to rectify the mistakes down the line than it would be to have an entirely different policy at source.
And Albie, it really, in effect, is going to be looking to change human rights law as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, it stops short of what the Tories and the Reform Party want to do. They want to scrap the Human Rights Act. They want to leave the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, completely. Shabana Mahmood is talking about some quite modest reforms to the ECHR, which Theresa May kind of tried and it didn't really work. So we'll see what happens there. But ultimately, I do think it is right that Shabana Mahmood is tackling this issue because I think it's an important issue. And just because you've got moral issues about it, if we just look at the electoral price here, the Labour Party are copying the Social Democratic Party of Denmark because they are a left-wing party in Scandinavia who had a threat from a reform-like party in Denmark. They solved the migration situation and then they won a landslide election. That is exactly what Labour should be doing.
Do you think that it would actually gain them any potential seats that could be lost to Reform, though? Because I do think that there are some areas who will never vote Labour, and I worry that it's a waste of their time to chase those voters.
But a lot of the seats that the Labour Party and the Reform Party are essentially in a battleground in are parties that voted Conservative in 2019, Labour back in 2024. They have a very checkered political history. So, yeah, I think it's certainly all to play for when it comes to these more, what you might call red wall seats, where these immigration issues are very salient.
But Ava, finally, do you think that Shabana Mahmood is trying to out-reform reform?
Well, yeah, I think that is sort of the general idea. And I think if you look at constituencies like Dover, where Mike Tapp is now the Labour MP, one of those checkerboard constituencies that you're talking about, because it does float between Tory and Labour, it might save Dover from reform. But if you look at the rest of the country, I cannot imagine, especially in London, I think that this will see Labour hemorrhaging votes rather than actually any impactful gain.
OK. Ava and Albie for the moment, thank you very much. Coming up, one of Donald Trump's staunchest allies says she's now receiving threats from his own supporters after calling for the release of the Epstein files. We'll discuss that next. Do stay with us.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear-gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, still with me, Albie Amankona and Ava Santina Evans. Let us take a look at the Guardian front page. And Donald Trump has fallen out quite spectacularly with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Tell us more, Albie.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene is an American politician, most famous for being a very avid supporter of Donald Trump. She really has been at the front of his Make America Great Again campaign. She did an interview with CNN over the weekend about this very issue, where she spoke about the fact that she spent millions of dollars of her own money on getting Donald Trump elected, was regularly seen campaigning with him up and down the country, both in the most recent election and the previous election in 2016-17. But she's had a spectacular fallout with Donald Trump over a number of issues, but the main issue is over the release of the Epstein files, where she is one of 4 Republicans to sponsor a Democrat bill which basically would force all of the non-confidential Epstein files to be released, which Donald Trump is thought to be. And there was some reporting earlier on this week that he was indeed in some emails between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has come out very strongly on this. Donald Trump has responded by calling her a lunatic, saying that she's a traitor. And in response to that, Marjorie Taylor Greene's been saying that she's been getting lots of death threats, that her safety is now at risk because of what Donald Trump has said.
Ava, quite the spat, isn't it, really?
Yes, and normally she is a woman of impeccable judgment. I can think of many examples that, when she condemned the mass shootings as false flags, or she suggested that the California wildfires were created by Jewish space lasers. But here she seems to be way off, which is wild. This, I guess, a stop clock is right twice a day. But she is having this very public spat with Donald Trump. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is probably one of the more prolific Democrats in the US, has said that this is all down to sort of internal politics. And this is because Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted she wanted a senator position, or she wanted a promotion of some sort, and Donald Trump had denied it. And now she is sponsoring this bill to release the Epstein files as some sort of revenge. Obviously, that is all talk and speculation from AOC, but it might explain why she has turned on the president in such an extraordinary way.
Yeah, and he also then turning on her and her describing the remarks as hurtful, but quite something when she feels that her life has been put in danger by the remarks of the president. Let's turn to the Times. 3 in 4 people paying top-rate tax don't feel rich. 3/4 of top-rate taxpayers don't consider themselves rich, according to a Times Money survey. Albie.
I want to know who they're interviewing for this, because I was having a read of this story and I thought, oh, 3 in 4 people who pay the top rate of tax don't feel rich. Well, I'm sure that's probably true because the level of taxation is so high. I thought I would instinctively agree with this story. But then I read the actual column inches and in here it says, the polling of more than 4,000 people suggested that owning a house outright, having more than £1 million in cash savings and earning a 6-figure salary were unlikely to make us feel well off. Who on earth are these people? Where are them?
They?
I mean, I don't know anyone who feels like that. If I had all of those things, I'd certainly feel like I was well off. And I instinctively want to defend people who feel that they're paying too high a tax. I even think the rich are paying too high a tax. But these people who were saying that having £1 million in cash savings is not going to make you feel well off, nonsense.
I think
we'd have to agree with that.
Well, yeah, and what's interesting about that, actually, as well, is that even these people who feel they don't feel rich, they still wouldn't qualify for the wealth tax that a number of the sort of eco-populist or more left-wing parties are calling for. Actually, even the Liberal Democrats at this point are calling for it. They still wouldn't qualify for it, you know, because they don't have £10 million in assets or liquid cash. But it's a shame about this story because it's pouring water on what should be a very serious conversation about tax thresholds in this country and why they have been frozen again, and they are expected to be frozen again at this autumn statement that Rachel Reeves is soon to deliver. You know, with rapid inflation, with wage stagnation, we've got a serious issue with these tax thresholds, and many people are being pushed over the marginal rate in a way that actually is rather unfair. But this survey isn't really helping.
Yes, no, I think you're right. That is the real story. Poorer people being dragged into a higher tax band, and this somewhat trivialises it. For the moment, Ava and Albie, thank you very much. We're going to have a look at the weather for you now. Well, a brisk northerly flow will bring some cold conditions to the UK and Ireland as Arctic air floods south. Wintry showers along with overnight frost and ice are in the forecast. Tomorrow morning, central and western areas will have a fine dry start to the day with some long sunny spells. North Sea coast will see showers with some turning wintry over the higher ground of the north.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.